Namaste. Welcome to our 84th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We are in the final chapter and still have a good ways to go because this is the longest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This chapter talks about Tyaga, being separated and disinterested in all the external material things in this world. It doesn't mean you're completely indifferent to what goes on, but it means you know that you are viewing it. It is not you. And much of it cannot touch you. And so you view it objectively. That's the main thing of what a tyagi is. He sees things very objectively. He doesn't identify it with himself and doesn't engage in any kind of, you might call it, ego adjustment for these things. Then sannyasa. Sannyasa is usually thought of as monastic life, the wearing of clothes of this color. But that's not what's meant here. Sannyasa literally means casting aside. But it doesn't imply an emotional type of rejection or, oh, this is bad and be gone. But it means just not touching it, letting go of it, observing it, learning, not being dead emotionally, not being unresponsive, but not letting it seize our mind and shape our thoughts, but rather to be centered into our very essential being, which is a witness consciousness. So then, in the 12th chapter, Krishna continues, for those who have not renounced the fruit of action, because you see, if you renounce it, see the effect of it, not the action. You can't get anywhere just by going off somewhere and just not being with anybody and doing nothing. But when you said, I've done my best, and that's the end of it, and I won't get caught up and involved in it, that is real renunciation, real sannyasa. But for those who don't engage in this, all of their actions, in other words, their karmas, which are produced by the actions, is threefold when they depart this world. Of course, also it happens. We reap the karmas too in this world, but Krishna is speaking of what happens afterwards, because there are many realms which we can ascend to or descend through according to our state of consciousness. So there is threefold: undesired, desired, and mixed. In other words, we can go to worlds and we say, no, I don't want to be here, but we will be because our own actions have put us there. Or we'll say, yes, this is congenial to me. I like this. I want to be in this place because the higher astral worlds are incredible. First of all, there's great happiness there. There's great beauty and great wonder there. I've seen a lot of tremendously beautiful places in this world. But I can tell you by experience that the astral world makes the most beautiful place in this world look just sort of like a mud pit by comparison. And it stuns you. It is so beautiful. And you're just utterly awed. And therefore, that also can be the result. A truly positive place where we certainly like to be. But For those who have separated themselves, the inner sannyasis, these things don't happen. We don't go to these worlds. What do we do? Well, he's not said it yet, but we'll go into pure consciousness. Learn from me these 5 factors for the accomplishment of all actions declared in the Sankhya. Sankhya is the oldest philosophy of India. It's actually the basis of physics and the basis of yoga. All right, the 5 factors that are involved in anything we do. The body, the doer, that is the sense of I am the doer, there's something for me to do. We're not just sitting in the body, it isn't a self-driving car. The functions of various kinds, that's seeing, hearing, tasting, and so on. And the faculties of the senses and the powers through which we experience them. Like we say, I like that view, we look at it. We see something ugly, we say, I don't want to see that, we turn away. This involves a very complex inner mechanism called the antakarana, the inner being. And the divine overseer is the 5th, the one who watches but does not act, but who perceives, and for whose benefit the whole show is going on. And this 5th is the reason behind everything. It's the purpose behind everything. The spirit. So you see, if we don't live uniting with our consciousness, uniting with our spirit, our life is useless. It's meaningless. It's pointless. It does not mean anything. Therefore, from life to life to life to life, we go with disappointment. We stay in some world for a while. We may like it, we may not. But then one day, whoosh, back down. Here we find ourselves. Somebody slaps us on the rear and we go, wah! And here we are. Having to do it all over again, grow up, learn, suffer, work, labor, and ultimately die and lose it all. The only thing that's stable in all this is our consciousness, our awareness. And though, as a rule, from life to life, we don't remember the previous ones, because if we did, we would still be caught up in them. So it's for our own good that the door is closed and we start out all new. Whatever action a man performs with his body, speech, or mind, either right or wrong, these are its 5 factors. In other words, therefore, if we're going to consider our life and our actions and order our life and actions, we are aware these are the 5 things involved that we will have to adjust and deal with. This being so, he who sees himself as the actual doer, in other words, he thinks that all these externals are himself. Naturally, after all, if you hit me, I say, you hit me. Well, you can't hit me because I'm a pure conscious entity. You just hit my body, but we're so immersed in it, we're lost in it. Okay, our consciousness is drowned in it, you see. So if we think this is all me and this is all there is to me, we don't really see, we don't really understand, we don't really know. Because he does not have a complete understanding. A little bit, yes, but not the whole picture. Part of the purpose of the Gita, and absolutely the purpose of yoga sadhana, is to get the whole picture. He whose state of mind is not egoistic, everything's done just me, 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 whose intellect is not clouded or tainted, in other words, his mind is very clear. Even though he slays all these people, he does not slay. Because remember, we're on the battlefield. And Arjuna is there. He's the leader. And when he gives a signal, they all come into conflict with the opposing army. And they don't just make faces at them or hit them a bit on the head. They kill them. And that's a good symbol. It's a symbol of the forces of ignorance, the forces of illusion that are opposing our growth, our evolution, our attaining of self-realization. And we don't make a peace treaty with them. We don't come to any kind of agreement. We go in and we cut their heads off. Krishna is shown using what's called a Sudarshan chakra. That's a spiritual symbol, but it was a real thing. It was about so big, made of steel. And the outer rim was razor sharp, but it had a hole in the middle. And you took it and you whirled it like this, and it spun around and around your finger. And you aimed it right, and then you went like that and let it go, and it went and cut off your opponent's head. So that's what has to be done with all of these things that oppose us. They have to be eliminated. So we must slay them. And yet, at the same time, he doesn't slay in the sense that he incurs no evil. And what he really does is he transmutes them. All the material enemies that Arjuna killed, they immediately left in their subtle body and went into the higher spiritual realm. Nothing in the world is ever destroyed. So in a sense, we say we kill the ego, we kill our greed, we kill our selfishness. But what really happens is we transmute it. And it goes into those virtues, those powers that are the opposite of what we have just been fighting. It's a really important thing to know. So don't worry, you'll never lose anything in this battle. You'll only gain. So he's not bound by karmic consequences on the battlefield and in the other. In fact, we're in our inner battlefield, we are ending karma. Fine. Knowledge, the known and the knower. In other words, the thing, the knowledge of the thing and the object itself, which we're knowing, but most of all, the knower in here, are the threefold impulse to action. The instrument, the action, and the doer are the threefold constituents of action. The weapon, the use of the weapon, and the user of the weapon, these are the three things involved. And we do have to think about the qualities of all three of them. It could seem like, well, it's just talk. or discussion, but it isn't. It's all practical instruction. It is said in the Sankhya philosophy, in the doctrine of the three gunas, which we've certainly considered at length, that knowledge, action, and the doer are of three kinds. Hear them also in order. That by which one sees the one indestructible being in all beings. In other words, you and I, we're pure consciousness, but we're finite. We're like waves on a vast, infinite ocean. And this one indestructible being and this one indestructible consciousness is the essence of our consciousness. Undivided in the divided. Though we're quite distinct and separate, that one is always one, and yet many. How is it possible? Well, in the supreme world, it's natural. Here, it's an impossibility. But it happens to be the truth of things, ultimately. But so let's go back to say that by which one sees the one indestructible being in all beings, undivided in the divided, the many, no, that knowledge is sattvic. That's luminous, and it's liberating, and it's life-giving. But that knowledge which sees in all beings different beings of various kinds. Now, it is that way momentarily. So, of course, you're going to see it, but you're going to know that behind the picture, behind the motion picture, is a screen that is a unitary thing. But that knowledge which sees in all beings different beings of various kinds, no, that knowledge is rajasic, because then we have to act. Well, there's you, and you're not me. And either you're walking toward me, not looking, and I got to say, hey, watch out, or I got to get out of your way. It creates action, and therefore it's rajasic. But that knowledge which clings to a single effect as if it were the whole. This is all about the effect. Because see, there is one being that is the whole. But that knowledge which clings to a single effect, impression, action, response, as if it were the whole, and without reason. In other words, not with any intelligence being applied, without basis in truth, and trivial. In other words, people have lots of ideas, they're just pipe dreams. They have no basis in reality at all. And we see people pursuing goals that are totally unrealistic and trivial. There are people who just think, well, just a little bit of this and I'm satisfied. For example, Swami Kriyananda wrote that, one of Yogananda's disciples wrote that a cousin of his came to visit him at the ashram in Los Angeles with her husband and to just see how he was doing. Of course, they loved each other very much. And they sort of wondered, well, what are you doing all this for? What are you kind of doing in this place? So he explained it. He explained how ultimately the only satisfaction was in spirit and the realization and the living in that spirit and the perspective of that spirit. So he was very articulate, so I'm sure he did a good job. But when he was over, she said, well, all I know is if I just had a new sofa, I'd be happy. Because he said, happiness is only here in the spirit. But for her, a new sofa. That is Tamasic. Tamasic means dull, dark, and unconscious. Most people live like that, with a little mixture, some of the rajasics, only a tiny bit of the sattvic. But obviously, the more we evolve, the greater the sattva becomes, and then it embraces and it transmutes the rajasic and the tamasic into it. Now, this thing here, that knowledge which clings to a single effect as if it were the whole. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved. Well, but you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ or don't you? Well, you see, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're not getting in. Okay? There's just one doctrine. Or, no, let's not talk about doctrine. It's just God. It's all God. We'll all talk about God. Hello, God. I love you, God. God, 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 you see. But it's more than that. There are people whose whole thing is it creating karma for me? Am I getting entangled? Am I going to be impelled to come back to rebirth? There are certain sects in India, they're not true Hindu. They're obsessed with karma. I mean, obsessed with karma. They really believe that if I hand this to them and they take it and they keep it, that they'll have to be reborn and give it back to me. It's that insanely outrageous. So karma's everything to them. Then there's, I want to go to heaven. Well, heaven is everything. We used to sing it when I was in church. Heaven holds all to me. Why should I care for the world and its sorrows? When in that land beyond the sea, whatever the sea was, but they meant in a spiritual world, millions are singing the wonderful story. Heaven holds all to me. That's Tamoguna. Just loving God. That's all you need is love. Or forget about God. Love, love. You get the idea, thank you. I'm pounding on that. That's a bit Tamasic too, to not give you a relief. But to just say one doctrine, one belief, one philosophical principle, one positive act, that's all you need. And that's it. And that's what matters. Or, yes, there are certain things, but the one thing is what you should always be thinking about and just capture that, get that, attain that, and so on. Well, you can say, well, you've just been saying that about God. Yes, but see, God's not a thing of the earth. So the Tamasic are involved in what is just of earthly. Well, the belief in reincarnation isn't of the earthly, isn't it? If there wasn't any reincarnation, there'd be no belief in it. So anything you can say is ultimately untrue. But mostly it is to just become a Johnny one note. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. Just that, though that. That thing, that's the whole thing. That's Tamasic. And its effects are Tamasic because they stay there. They never grow beyond it. They're born it doesn't have to be a church. There can be born in a certain sect in Hinduism or of Islam or Buddhism. And they're that, and they were taught it and they learned it, the elements. And then that was it. And they never did any more. They never studied any more about the religion. They never learned any more. And they never took on any more disciplines. That's Tamasic also. Because it's a soul killer in that it's a soul trap. You think you're doing something, but you aren't. You think you're getting somewhere, but you're not. So all this must also be fled from. And I see I have not uncommonly gone beyond the time. So we will start then. We've talked about knowledge. So now we're going to talk about action, because knowledge is worthless if it isn't backed up by action. So actually, this is the right point to stop. So namaste, namaste, until our next time.